Welcome back. So the first part was Paulina asking me about my creative journey. Now it's my turn to ask Paulina about her creative journey. So welcome back.
Thank you.
For part two. And in part one, we talked about my creative journey. Tell me about your journey. You've been doing it a little bit longer than I have. Been involved in creativity, tell us about that.
Yeah, I think there's two parts. I think there's the business part and then there is the more personal part. So the business part, yes, I've probably, business-wise for working for myself, it's been 2 years. And yeah, I actually was able to, in my previous career as an innovation director for a big corporate, was able to start my creative journey within big corporate, which is unusual in the fact that I actually started to study for a Master's of Science in Creativity while I was in big corporate, and I started to teach and train in the area of creativity when I was actually there. So yeah, the last couple of years we ran a 7-day creative leadership school within the big company that I worked for. So yeah, so it's a little bit about how when I stepped out that I actually have quite developed skills, and by that time I'd finished my Master's of Science, which is unusual. Most people, there are quite a people probably in the world that have that, but most people don't know that that exists. But lately I've been actually working on developing my own personal creativity, and though we're very clear that creativity is not necessarily about artistic or whatever, I've kind of started to do my second book and do writing, and yeah, and that's a whole creative journey in and of itself. I was going to say hell. I was like, no, I'll cut that off, but I think hell was it. Hell at the moment, which is when you do
writing is hell.
Yes, that you're not that good at. Do you know what I mean? It's not that you're bad at it, but yeah, that's actually a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. Having written a couple of books and some articles and things myself in knowledge management, yes, it is hell. So, but it's something that you just have to keep working on, right?
It is something that you have to keep working at. And it's funny, just because something's not always feeling pleasant, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. You know, you do get joy out of even the bad moments, but it's, yeah, reconciling yourself that, yes, it's not going to be all unicorns and rainbows. And I think sometimes when we talk about creativity, it does kind of come in that, oh, it's just so magical, it's just so wonderful. And it kind of cuts it short because it's really, it's like life. It has all of the emotions in it. And yeah, you can't live without actually experiencing all the emotions. You can't be creative or have a creative experience without going through all the emotions.
Yes. You have to have the highs to have the lows, and the lows to have the highs.
Exactly.
I was saying about when you were asking me in the first video about the presentation I did at Creative Mornings, I was crazy nervous. I would never let that stop me. You can't let the lulls or the down points, stop you. So
it's true, unless it's like rock climbing, which you mentioned in the first video, when you hate it. There are some things you don't have to do, but when you were actually doing a bigger goal.
Yes, and rock climbing is clearly one of them.
Exactly, you got to stick through it.
Yes, yeah, it's important to try these things, It's important to try writing. You are on your second book, so clearly you didn't hate it as much as I hated rock climbing.
You know what, even though I don't have children, my mother once said, you know what happens, because my mother, I've got 2 other siblings. My mother told me that the minute that after you've had this birth, which isn't so pleasant, you get handed this cute little kid, and she's like, you forget. So it's kind of like same thing. You give birth, you have this finished creation, and then you're like, you forget how bad it was.
Yes, you do. They've done studies. You then forget. It's part of the pregnancy, the hormones. Yeah, absolutely it is. So now I'm going to ask you a bit more about the education piece, because I don't have education in creativity. So I find that education piece really interesting because I have learned it kind of on the job. So why did you go back and do the Masters in Creativity in the first place? What spurred that on?
Well, I was an innovation director launching and conceiving of and launching new products. And we would have a lot of ideation sessions, generating ideas for new products. And we'd have lots of agencies come in and help us. And no one really seemed to know what they were doing. And I got really curious about, was there a better way? So I started to run some of my own ideation sessions, and I'm not sure that I got a better result either. And I kind of realized that, yeah, no one knows what they're doing. And there must be, if creativity is the catalyst to innovation, there must be something more to this. So that's when I heard about there's an advanced degree in it. And I thought, well, this might be the perfect complement to innovation, because you need it, but nobody seems to understand it. So yeah, when I found out there was a Master's of Science in Buffalo State, which is upstate New York, yeah, and they do a distance learning program. Yeah, that's when I applied and got in and started my journey of the formal study of the science of creativity to understand originally its impact with innovation, but it became a very personal journey very quick.
Yeah. And has it made a difference then?
Oh, it's made a huge difference. Actually, we never worked with another creative agency as far as running or generating ideas ever again when I worked at big corporate, because they didn't know what they were doing. That was clear. But more than that, it's the difference between like creativity and innovation is, and even like design thinking and creative problem solving, is over on that side, it's like left brain. It's very commercially oriented. It's very much an outcome. Whereas this is so much more intrinsically motivated, how you feel, how you think, how you experience the world, how you think about how you think. And these are very deeply personal concepts. And even if you're not actually applying them in the sense of painting, drawing, you are, because like you're either gardening or you're walking or you're just thinking. And understanding and having a better insight even to how you think and how you process is hugely beneficial, and it starts to make you question who you are, and that's a really wonderful thing.
Yes, it is, and that that questioning and some of that same thinking, like you say, whether it's painting or drawing or gardening, there are elements of that are gardening's creative, cooking's creative, and it's a permission thing. I think, for at least to a certain extent, that we have to give ourselves permission, right?
It's true.
To try to ask the questions,
and sometimes not to dismiss it, because I was listening to a podcast on creativity, and they're like, well, adding another spice to your dish is creative. And I get it. On one level, I think some people would be quite dismissive. It's hardly an experiment or high risk, but depending on how many people you're feeding and whatever it is. But it's less about it having to be big or impactful or even risky. And it's, as you said, it's not waiting for permission. It's like going out there, experimenting, trying new things, and being prepared for the consequences, regardless of having set ideas of failure or success, and kind of just forgetting about those kind of, guardrails.
Yes. Go, the floor's not going to open up and swallow me whole, just because I didn't follow the recipe exactly word for word, So, yeah. So now that you finished the Master's in Creativity, what, 3 or 4 years ago?
2012. So yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. So 6 years ago. So
yeah.
How has life changed? How has life changed since then?
Life has changed quite a lot. It was probably, I'd say, with professional development, 2 best things I ever did. So there was one other thing that was quite amazing, but it came as a result of doing this. So yeah, it was the best thing I ever did as far as professional and personal development, in the sense that it gave me license to go out and be a creative practitioner now. Ironically, when I worked for myself, I figured I would be doing innovation consulting. I don't really do that. What I do now is train people in what I know about creativity and show them how to get the best out of people. And that's a really rewarding career, because in a sense, you're a teacher and you're igniting creativity rather than it being personal and about me, which there is a section we talked about earlier that is, but it's also about passing on that knowledge, giving the baton and giving it to other people. That's an extraordinarily rewarding thing to do with your time.
Yes. So what was the second thing that you mentioned there, that there were 2 things? What's the second one?
I joined a mastermind group a couple of years ago about how do you actually think differently. And it wasn't per se about creativity, but it was kind of like, it was kind of coaching, kind of facilitation mastermind group. And that took me out of the world of delivering creativity and probably gave me some structure around the business of creativity. And gave me better skills on how to actually handle a pricing conversation. creatively in a way that actually gets people across it, because, you know, we don't like talking about money and demanding money for our services. And it helped me to actually normalize some of those processes. So yeah, so that was kind of useful. So it was kind of, this was the business skills to develop a business. And then these were the actual like tools that would be to run a business.
Right, right. Very good. Yeah, I have been in a mastermind group when I lived in Toronto. So they're great groups. So good. Now, when we started a few minutes ago, you mentioned personal and professional as far as your creativity sort of practice. What's the personal? Tell me a bit more about the personal side.
The personal side is probably twofold. It's the facilitation of groups and understanding how groups work, or individuals. It's that, and that's a real love and a passion, and that's a deep curiosity about how people think, about how they feel, how they work, and that's partially intuition. But then there's also a lot of knowledge about the science and psychology, how people make decisions, even how the brain works. So that actually is quite a passion. And today I was reading How Emotions Work, and that's an interesting book, and kind of debunking all our thoughts about how emotions actually work, how we think they work, and how they actually work. So that's one side of it. And then the other side of it is starting to actually capture those thoughts and then bring it into my writing to create a book. So yeah, that's kind of my creative, and then the ultimate creative practice, sorry, is living with a cat. Yeah, who cares? The psychology of cats.
Is there a psychology of cats?
Oh my God. Yes, there is. It's how you actually get trained by a little creature that's only this big.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm allergic, so I don't have that.
Yeah, they train you.
Yes. Okay, very good. What about your personal creativity? You know, I paint, or at least, and that's, you know, I'm selling paintings now, so maybe that's less personal, but than how it started out. But what's your creative outlet?
My creative outlet, physical creative outlet, other than the kind of the professional stuff that we actually talked about, as well as I do a bit of aerial, they call it yoga, but it's not really yoga. It's aerial acrobatics. That's a better term.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
So I'm a part-time circus performer, and horrible at it.
Cool.
So there's no chance that there could ever be money made for it. But yeah, getting in touch with my physical side, because yeah, I'm in my 50s, and prior to that, I've never liked gyms. I've liked long walks, but it's not really practical. And then I discovered the circus, and it was kind of like the perfect creative outlet. So I'm becoming, I wouldn't say sporty, I think that's too far, but I have a physical practice for the very first time.
Nice. That sounds like fun. And I've been trying some dance workshops here in Berlin, so it kind of reminds me a bit of, you know, my experimentation with dance. I'm never going to be a dancer, but it's kind of fun to go and do these workshops. So sounds like aerial acrobatics is the same for you. So that's cool. And I'm good at asking questions, and my mind just went blank. So, yeah. So now, does creativity run in your family? Are there other creative people around you?
Well, it's a good question. And how do we define creativity? And it's interesting because we've launched into this conversation, and we probably haven't taken a step back and talked about it. We've alluded to it, and we've said it's more than artistic practice, but yet we've talked a lot about each of us having an artistic practice. And so I guess where I would say creativity, I like to say your creative self is your best self. And it's about learning to actually bring your best self to more occasions, more often. But even as I evolve that, maybe that's not the best term, because it always isn't about your best self, if you know what I mean. It's about maybe your true self. And that's kind of a weird kind of concept. What is your true self? You are your true self. But yeah, it's kind of taking the judgment, and as you earlier said, the mask off.
Yeah.
And kind of just living life in the present. So yeah, would I say that if we look at creativity that way, everybody is definitely endowed with it. But when we look at it in the more traditional way, as far as, you know, artistic kind of skills, I did find out recently that my 80-year-old mother was actually wanted to be an artist when she started off. And a little bit like you, was told that that wouldn't make money, or that's not a good idea. And yeah, never actually pursued her dream. But in a perfect world, she would have loved to have gone to art school instead of nursing school. But those were the days when women didn't have as many choices.
Yes. Now, did she start painting after she retired or anything like that? Does she paint now?
I wish her, no. She kind of just put it on the shelf and kind of said, oh, well, that was a past life. So yeah, no, she doesn't. And that's a shame. And it's too late now because she's not well enough to actually support herself in physically in standing up in front of an easel or even a notebook. But yeah, it's an important reminder to anyone who's listening that life actually is pretty quick. So it's important that if you have passions or curiosities, and passions may be too strong, if you just have curiosities, explore them, because you don't know where they'll lead.
No. I start talking to people on the tram sometimes, which is saying something for an introvert, and it's really interesting, the conversations that I get into, and one person came out to an art exhibition afterwards that I did, and we've stayed, in contact. So yeah, you never know who's sitting beside you on the tram, so yeah, if you have a curiosity, talk to the person. Or if you're curious about rock climbing, give it a try.
Even though we've slammed it in this video.
There are people that like it.
True.
I am just not one of them. That's okay.
Fair.
Yes. If we all like the same things, that would be really boring.
It really would be, wouldn't it?
It would. So yeah, just think if we were all accountants. So yes, anyway, we're talking about you.
That's okay. It can be a conversation. See, it's just, it doesn't matter. It's not about interviewing you, interviewing me. Yes.
So is there anything, I'm just looking at the clock and thinking, probably our viewers have, this is getting a bit
what, our audience of 10 million things to do.
Things to do. They have recipes to make, gardens to garden, paintings to paint, books to balance if there are some accountants in the viewing audience. So are there any words of wisdom you would like to share before we wrap this up?
No, I don't have any words of wisdom. I wish I did, but I do maybe have a question. So, well, actually, we should go back to, I wanted to ask you something. Sorry, now I really should just stick to the script and just offer some words of wisdom. Well, I think the words
ask a question. Ask a question and give me your words of wisdom.
Okay. I'll ask the question first. So we were talking earlier in this podcast, or whatever we want to call this, about definitions of creativity. I have a new one I want to try on you and see whether it resonates. So I'm playing with this today. Okay. So it may be clumsy. Okay. So what if there were kind of like 3 maybe levels of creativity? Okay. And the kind of base level is, and maybe base is too strong, like it puts it down, but whatever. It's more the smaller levels where it's actually making combinations like opposites or whatever. So if you're trying one thing and it hasn't been working, you kind of say, well, why wouldn't you try this? Why wouldn't you? If black doesn't work, why wouldn't you just put in white? So that's kind of like the base, and it's about new combinations, etc. But kind of challenging your thinking and kind of saying, what is the rules around here, and breaking them to get a new insight. So that would be kind of the base. The second one would actually be playing between the two. So let's just say, if parting is such sweet sorrow, it's about having the sweetness and the sourness and kind of playing with the two and actually saying, oh, it's paradoxical. Ooh, that's interesting. So instead of actually just choosing one or the other direction, you're kind of holding the two together and you're kind of looking at them kind of going, oh, right, I don't have to make a decision between black and white or right or wrong or dualities. I can kind of play with the two and see where they go. Right. And then
find another road.
Yeah, is actually saying, hang on, not only can I hold the paradox and kind of play with it, but there's space for almost a third. So it's like the paradox becomes integrated. So it becomes less about the duality and seeing the duality and being comfortable with the duality or the contradiction, and actually the integrating the contradiction. And that's almost kind of like the highest, it's a bad term because it implies that there's better or worse, and which is not its intent. But yeah, its highest form of creativity. What do you think?
I think that's an interesting idea. I'm not sure that I understand how I'm going to say the second one differs from the third.
Yeah.
So it's like the third one is there's sort of a synergistic effect to get from, okay. Yeah, that.
It's like you're no longer holding the tension. The second one, you're holding the tension, like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see how it could be mixed. And the third one just kind of unifies it all and just kind of goes, duh. Of course.
Yeah.
And think about it. One's a little more analytical. One is a little less analytical, where you're starting to actually play with it. And the third one just kind of says, look, I'm just in the right brain, so to speak. I've just integrated it all. It's all one. It's all two. It's all one. And suddenly, being one with the universe, but knowing you're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lack of a better term.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Cool. All stuff in the book. Words of wisdom.
Okay.
Well, the joking side of me says get a cat. But the words that I'll regret quite shortly was I'll be like, come on, leave me alone. I think stop thinking about it and just do it. I mean, we talked about it in our trial run. It's a bit about the Nike slogan. Yeah, I think we're all too hard on ourselves included. Yep. And it's, the world isn't going to open up and eat you. And, I was talking to a friend yesterday and she's like, oh, I'm just putting myself out on Instagram. I didn't know how hard it would be. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, it's like putting yourself out there naked in front of 1 million people. I said, that's hard. But I said, the really hard part is no one cares. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes. It's like no one was watching anyway. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So doing it all with no expectation of anything but the learning process.
Yes. 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 And that realization that no one cares and no one's looking.
Exactly.
Yes. That's harder in some ways. So.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. It's like, how do I get noticed? Hello. Yes. Anyway, we better wrap that up. Thank you so much for doing these videos today with me, and and have a great evening, because it's evening in Sydney.
It is indeed. So dinner, my tummy. There you go, new word. My tummy is rumbling.
Excellent. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.